Please welcome to the stage His Excellency Khalid Al-Falih of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and Andrew Liveris of Lucid Motors.
Good afternoon. Nice to be back. I was on an earlier panel, as some of you may have noticed, on a subject of great import to the world as we sit here today in terms of globalization 2.0, and I'm so thrilled to have my good friend and erstwhile partner, Khalid Al-Falih, His Excellency, Minister of Investment of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. Just full disclosure, Khalid and I partnered together and created the world's largest industrial complex ever built at the one time, called Sadara in the kingdom. So we do go back a while. So Khalid, I think we still look pretty good, I think. But when I was in the Dow job, and of course Khalid was the chairman CEO of Saudi Aramco. So Khalid, Excellency, I'm going to have to watch myself all morning.
Khalid is good.
So the conversation on supply chains and the many vantage points the kingdom has and you have as Minister of Investment, I think would be of strong interest. This morning we talked about disruption, we talked about digital innovation, and we talked about transparency of supply chains and governance. And I think the audience would love to hear how you're thinking about them from your particular seat in the kingdom.
Well, thank you, Andrew. It's good to be here, and thanks to the Concordia organizers for giving me the opportunity to share my perspective and shed light on the kingdom and how we see global supply chain issues. Globalization, of course, has been good to us. It's been good to us personally, it's been good to our organizations and countries, and it's been evolving over many, many decades. It's not new. But I think there's also too much of a good thing might not be good. And I think globalization did go in steroids for a while to the point where we stressed the global system of manufacturing, trade, services, and it became very, very vulnerable. It came to light, of course, with COVID, but it's not just COVID. Viruses and pandemics go back before COVID, and unfortunately they're going to be with us as some viruses will break out like COVID, and we will have global impact, national impacts, and impacts on certain critical. I think another area where perhaps we got ahead of ourselves is the desire to always have the lowest cost possible, to the point where we try to only build the capacity we need. So everybody was trying to get to 100% capacity utilization. There was no slack in systems because everybody's trying to get that high utilization. And then on the issues of sustainability, social values, governance, which is a great thing, perhaps we also got ahead of ourselves and didn't manage that transition on ESG the way we could have, should have, and hopefully now that we've been burned, we would do that. And of course, global geopolitics is always a factor. I think we did celebrate that the world is flat. We did celebrate that the WTO as a multilateral organization is all-inclusive, and we brought the community of nations, all people, and we started taking manufacturing, logistics around the world, and that has been, again, a good thing, but perhaps at the expense of vulnerability to any political issues, and we're seeing it today. Of course, it's as visible as it's been in my lifetime with the war in Europe. So in the kingdom, we see these trends. We have been warning ourselves and others that we need to perhaps predict that these things would happen. In the area of energy, we have built spare capacity to ensure that the world is not as vulnerable as it would have been if we had been operating with 100% tight capacity on oil, for example. And the kingdom has spent massively on oil capacity as an example. And we've also been preaching for a long time, and unfortunately the congregation wasn't listening, that on ESG we're going to need all energy sources, and we're going to need, in addition to renewables, which we're investing in heavily in the kingdom and in the region and leading the way in the energy transition, but we have been and continue to invest in oil, increasing capacity. We just announced that we will increase our oil capacity to 30 million barrels, as well as investing in the entire value chain of energy.
Yeah, and I think the energy transition, which is obviously massive, as you just said, Excellency, but also disruption in supply chains means energy security and food security and defense security. And this period of time in human history, the affordability model to get that done is going to be quite disruptive. So how do you think about that from a point of view of geopolitics, and who do we trade with, who do we trust, and how do you actually build supply chains that are trust-based and also solve for national security? And while I've got the question, we talked earlier about the Inflation Reduction Act and the CHIPS Act and how that's going to add semiconductor manufacturing here in the United States. Is every nation going to start doing that?
Well, I think nationalism, from a political side is with us, and we see it with many countries, and election campaigns around the world are tilting that way. We see it in Europe, we've seen it in other countries as well. And one of the results will be to onshore some of the global supply chain. And I think some of that is good because, again, I say we need to build buffer capacity. Interdependence sounds good, but if it's too tight, too much of it is harmful. What I worry about is erecting barriers, not that some countries will be building capacity. We ourselves have an investment program in the kingdom that measures approximately $3.2, $3.3 trillion in the next decade to diversify our economy, to build manufacturing, logistics, energy, and green energy in particular, in addition to what I mentioned earlier on oil and gas. So we're doing it, but we're not erecting barriers. We're still going to be, as a country and as a region, very much integrated in the global trading system. And then we're being very transparent. Our oil and gas and manufacturing facilities, Andrew, is the most environmental friendly, in a sense. The lowest carbon footprint on any barrel produced today is in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. The lowest carbon and methane footprint is in our oil and gas. Our iron, our aluminum is 60% less carbon emissions, and fertilizers and petrochemicals. It's all about 60% less carbon emitting than our peers in Europe and in Asia and in other production centers. So we're going to build up on this capacity, and we're going to make it available. Obviously, our allies, traditionally, in building out our economy and industry, are here in the U.S., European partners, and we would want to work with them on putting in place additional, more open trading agreements that we're negotiating with these countries. We're doing special economic zones that His Royal Highness the Crown Prince will announce in due course, that will allow global companies to locate in the kingdom, take advantage of our competitive advantages, and trade in and trade out. The kingdom is also politically strongly interconnected, not just in the Middle East with the Arab world, but across Asia and Africa, and as I mentioned, in Europe and America. So the kingdom will be able to access raw materials that we don't have. We have a great endowment of minerals in the kingdom that will be, that some of it is being mined and produced across the value chain. And we're also going to integrate regionally to bring in materials in the kingdom and build these integrated value chains and making them available for our trading partners around the world.
And so this remake of the kingdom's economy. I hate to say beyond petroleum. I think that was coined by Lord John Brown from BP, but really literally beyond hydrocarbons. This is a story that is not really being well told internationally, and that's one of your jobs. In fact, it is your job, is the narrative of what's going on in the kingdom to actually become a 21st century diversified economy that's open for investment. How do you fix the narrative? What sorts of things should an audience like this be hearing?
Well, I think pillar number one for any investment destination is going to be the stability of that country, politically, economically, financially, and whether it's a resilient country to go and do business, and socially, and all aspects. And as you mentioned, you worked with me, 15 years ago, and we created together, after you, your board, your employees, your management team were all convinced. Numerous visits that you did to our petrochemical industry and our oil and gas, and looked at our workforce and the brilliance that they can deliver to their employers, and you made one of the biggest commitments as a foreign investor in the kingdom that is still shining out there about the value of partnership. But I go back. The country has, in all metrics, economic, financial, monetary, I will not mention them, but it's second to none today, and we've proven it through multiple economic, energy, and of course the healthcare shocks that we have seen, that the kingdom emerged out all of them standing strong and leapfrogging our peers as we go forward. The second one is related to it. It's a friendly investment environment. And in Saudi Arabia, we're quite open. We have new regulations that have been updated, and some new regulations that have been introduced. We're in the process of putting together a new investment law that would just solidify our position where it's a level playing field for international and domestic investment. The third pillar for our attractiveness is infrastructure that's available. Of course, you know it. You've invested with Dow in Jubail, and you've invested now with Lucid in Cake on the West Coast. But we have over 40 industrial cities. We have thousands of kilometers of first-rate roads. We're rated 1 or 2 globally in our connectivity index. We're building additional railway, but we have a good railway network. Some 10 ports on the Red Sea and the Gulf that are truly world-class. And I think equally important in today's world is our digital infrastructure and digital connectiveness. The kingdom is rated as number 1 or 2 by, and some of you will be surprised, by many global agencies in terms of our digital competitiveness, including cybersecurity resilience, which is very. Another pillar, of course, which underpinned the Dow investment in Sadara is cost competitiveness. And energy, whether it's electricity, gas, LPG, other products, we're anywhere 20% to 10% of where global costs are today. And then we're stable. Prices don't change up and down. These are regulated prices that the regulator sets for investors and guarantees for a certain number of years when you start an investment, to make investments predictable and bankable. The other thing is we look at things in an integrated way. We don't look at an investor as bringing a single investment. We look at the entire value chain, which is, I think, very, very important. We want to be competitive not only on a single investment, but we look at the entirety, and we're investing in all elements of these value chains. And for the first time, as you referred to, Andrew, in terms of our Vision 2030 and what we're doing, we're investing heavily in innovation. 20% of the kingdom's running budget is going into education, preparing the workforce, not for the jobs that we have today only, but also for the jobs of the future. and our workforce is starting to attract a lot of investors, not only in the physical industries of manufacturing and logistics, but also in IT. We have a great entrepreneurship scene with venture capital growing year on year in terms of investing in our young entrepreneurs by an order of magnitude year on year. So the kingdom is holistic in its approach. We have what I believe are all of the elements that a global investor, and then of course our location is great. We're right at the intersection of the world's three largest continents in terms of population: Africa, Asia, and Europe, where a lot of trade. We're right there at the Red Sea, where 15% of the trade passes. And last but not least, we have Vision 2030. It is probably the world's most integrated roadmap that addresses not only what the kingdom needs, but what the world needs. And it's led by a strong leader, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince, who has his hands on the wheel all the time, who guides me, guides my fellow ministers, and ensure that we're staying on the plan, on message, and delivering on our promises.
And I think the acronyms you should start hearing: the world's largest green hydrogen project in NEOM by Air Products. The kingdom will be very large in hydrogen, both green and blue, as an example. KAUST, one of the most endowed research universities in the world, another acronym you should start hearing about a lot. And Khalid was the chairman of the board of trustees there.
Absolutely. And these are enablers for investors. I mean, the hydrogen is not built for Saudi Arabia. The hydrogen is built to go into iron and steel industries that need to replace coal and blast furnaces. And we're building it for $5 billion before customers are. There is no offtake.
Oh.
We haven't built it but we're saying build it and they come. And people are coming. Unfortunately, some steel plants are closing as we speak in Europe because of the energy situation and because of the environmental situation. We hope they don't, and we hope they stay. But we know that carbon-emitting industrial plants will need to be replaced by competitive, reliable, predictable industrial centers. And I believe the kingdom will be there. And as you mentioned, KAUST is providing the innovation, right, the research and development, as well as the young people who are fueling what is happening in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia.
So we're out of time, but the last acronym to remember: MISA, Minister of Investment, Saudi Arabia, and this is His Excellency, the Minister. So thank you very much, Khalid.
Thank you.